Hey guys, it's Gav here. Just thought we'd go live for a few minutes. People are always asking me to do these live Q&A, just like streams for subscribers, and you know what? You guys deserve it, because if you subscribe, you help to spread the word. And so I just wanted to dedicate a show today to answering your guys' questions and answers, and we're going to get to that in just a second. I'm actually going to go out to the other side of the studio and I set a tripod up over there so that I don't have to do this the whole time, right? Nobody wants to see that. Hey guys, I see you in there. I've just been in here working on photos and some products that I'm working on. Here's the photo I was just working on, and that, because I know if I would like walk away and didn't show it, it's looking a little brighter on this screen for some reason. That's my wife, Sandra. So sometimes she's my model. Pretty lady. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm gonna put this here for today's live Q&A. Hey guys, I see you in there. Yes, having a model is good. That's why you marry your model. This chair, I'm just making sure it's gonna hold me. And I'm gonna adjust this light a smidgen so that it's not too much. I don't like harsh light. And let us see here. Whoops, let me make sure I've got moderation set up, all right? So this one, I'm gonna get comfortable here. This one's for you guys. This one's for you guys. Let's read the rules, shall we? This live Q&A with Gavin Syme, the rules are as follows. The speaker of the live Q&A reserves the right to ignore any and all questions. No counsel given within the video shall be considered legal advice, so do not consider it as such. Any trolls may be immediately blocked from the session, not to be returned to communicating within the session. You may ask any question you like, and you may not get an answer. You may feature your comment on the top of the video chat during the session by using the super chat, which will charge you money not set by Gavin Syme to feature your chat to the entire chat room and to Gavin Syme. Gavin Syme will try to answer lots of questions. The end. The rules are complete. Here's the rules. Okay. Enough fakey accents. I'm here. Let's talk. Crazy stuff. Somebody asked, what do I think about Charlottesville? I did a video, I believe, yesterday. So rather than like go into a diatribe about the craziness of Charlottesville, let me say this though, okay? Tearing down monuments will not fix tyranny. We need to tear down tyranny. We need to tear down the drug war. We need to tear down the prisons. We need to tear down the abuse. And so a lot of these people out there waving flags, Confederate or American or whatever, yes, a lot of them are supporting the blue line and supporting abuse and even racist at times, as they support the false narrative of borders and abusing people from across borders and that Americans are better than other people. So people promoting that, they are wrong, and so are people promoting that blacks should be above whites, or any of this human supremacy stuff. We need people supporting that all men are created equal, and to quit fighting over monuments and banners while the country's being destroyed. All right? Okay, so I'm watching the comments. You guys may have to repeat your questions because they fly by here on the screen, and I can only answer so many, and that doesn't mean I can remember them. Somebody said, what do I think about the military? Typically, militaries are used to enforce the power and abuse of the state. This is particularly so in recent years. I have lots of veteran friends, and this light is still harsh. I have lots of veteran friends, and I will say many of them are actually the ones telling me what they have us doing over there is not protecting freedom. And that's the problem, is we have people thinking they're heroes because they wear a uniform, and that's not what makes you a veteran of liberty, and it's not what makes you a hero. If you stand up against tyranny and defend liberty, you're a veteran of liberty. I don't care whether you're in a service or not. I can't seem to adjust this goofy camera to make it matte. It's so light. It should not be this bright, but whatever. It is what it is. Okay, somebody else asked, I'm looking here, see if I can, okay, just slow down a little here. How did I get such a pretty wife? That's a good question. By the grace of God, my friend. How do I feel about illegal immigrants? There is no, and I think I did a video on this. I've been talking about this more and more because I've done a lot of historical study, and I'm going to be doing more videos on the immigration thing. I did a video of this on my Facebook page recently if you want to see it. I'm not sure if I did one posted it here to the YouTube channel or not. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. It is impossible. It's not a liberty principle. It's not a Founding Fathers principle. The Founding Fathers absolutely did not support or even debate the idea of restricting people walking into your country. That doesn't mean they didn't support sovereignty and having borders. It means they didn't support terrorizing people. Did you guys know that if you come up from Mexico just to visit the United States, they charge you like $1,000 or something like that? It's just a scam. It's an extortion scam. The whole border fiasco is created by our government. The social programs that drain our system are created by our terrorist government. The false narratives, as they ship in terrorists to actually terrorize along with our police and government who terrorize us. They create all these false narratives, and the people of Mexico, for example, they kind of laugh at this false American ideology that all Mexicans want to come to America and be free, because Mexicans have more freedom than Americans do. They have more boldness than Americans do in terms of disobeying unjust laws. Doesn't mean they don't have a corrupt government. Yeah, it doesn't cost a thing to visit Mexico. In fact, the Mexican liberty people, the people for liberty in Mexico that you see down there protesting and standing up, they're actually trying to shut down checkpoints on the border, on the inland. They completely disapprove of any of these checkpoints. They don't believe that we should be restricted coming to visit their country either. And so this doesn't mean you don't have any border security, but the federal government has absolutely zero authority in the Constitution to have a border patrol, to be on the border. If anything, that kind of monitoring is a state level, unless there's actually a military invasion, of course, then we enter a different thing. So this is a topic for another video, but this isn't some kind of a like leftist weird ideology. The Founding Fathers, the concept of an illegal immigrant did not exist, and the concept of immigration checkpoints did not exist. The concept of restricting someone from coming to this country did not exist in the discussion in the forming of the Constitution. And so that's all a false narrative, and it's pretend patriotism. Okay, I'm looking at other comments. Bear in mind that as I take on a comment, I talk for a minute about it, and so sometimes the comments get kind of fly by because I'm trying to think about what I'm saying here and keep my points concise. Thoughts on Charlottesville, I already addressed that a few minutes ago, and I did a video about it to address it more extensively, I think yesterday or the day before. So go to the channel and see my, I believe that video is called They Don't Want Equality, I believe, is the one I made a couple days ago that addresses these issues. I also did some on this topic on my Facebook page. Follow the Facebook page, facebook.com/callmegav, because I do different videos. Sometimes the videos cross over, and particularly my activism videos and stuff, but I kind of have a different tenor to the videos I do, so sometimes I'll do a live stream there and then do a live stream here. For example, today's live stream is just being done on YouTube, not over on Facebook. Unmarked cars, unmarked police cars should be illegal everywhere. You should not have Gestapo sneaking around looking for ways to rob and extort you while endangering your families by making it the norm to stop for anyone who flashes a light on you on a dark and lonely road. It's idiotic, and I've raised this issue a lot. Some of my most viral videos are about unmarked police cars, which are completely illegal for patrol in Washington state. So yeah, see my video on that. Man pulls over cop. If you search for that on YouTube, you will see my video, and there's many others on my channel about that. Okay, I'm looking, I see you guys. How old am I? Retro says, oh, man. I'm 32, I think. I might be 33, but to be perfectly honest, I forgot. Okay, yeah, anyways, right in there. Right in there. My wife's not here right now, so, okay, hi guys, I see you. Let's see, do you have to stop at Border Patrol checkpoints? Border Patrol checkpoints are completely illegal under the Fourth Amendment. See my videos, how to respond at a border checkpoint. There's a couple of videos I've had that were pretty viral on that topic. So again, like most of these topics that are coming up, if you really want to see my answer, go see me in action, because I don't just talk about this stuff, I go out and do it. I believe that everyone should be resisting in some way any kind of checkpoint. I'm not saying to use force and violence. I don't want you going to prison, but you should at least be speaking out up to the point where you feel like you have to maybe comply because there's a gun to your head, right? I'm not saying get thrown in prison and die on every hill, but there should always be a resistance put up at any sort of a checkpoint of some kind. You should question them. You should say, I'm not answering your questions, but I will ask you some questions. You should always have a camera on. Now this goes for DUI checkpoints, fruit Nazi checkpoints, Border Patrol checkpoints, any checkpoints, question them. Now, of course, it's going to be harder to do that. If you're actually coming into the country, like we're so far gone that that's going to be a hard one to take on. So typically I would focus on the inland checkpoints at this point. That doesn't mean you shouldn't film at the immigration checkpoints at the border, but the ones that we're seeing a lot of and growing is the inland checkpoints. And actually Mexico has those now, and the Mexico people are really standing up. They've even taken over some of those checkpoints in their protest. The people of Mexico stand up actually way bolder. Instead of just waving flags and talking bravado, they tend to get out and do stuff. And there's certainly people that do that in America, but they tend to be in prison. You know, like the Schaefer Coxes. The Schaefer Cox appeal was in the Ninth Circuit today. I just posted a video from it over on my Facebook page. Go check that out. You know, the Bundy trial, absolute sham. And I did a video on Facebook about that last night. Bundy trial, the first round, one of 3 trials. The first trial just went the second time because they couldn't convict the first time. Get this, go watch my video on Facebook after this is over, but they didn't even allow them to have witnesses, guys. The defense did not get witnesses. The prosecution got to say and do whatever they wanted. The defense didn't get to argue the Constitution. They didn't get to have witnesses. They got to have one witness, which was one of the defendants. One of the other defendants tried to witness for himself, and they took him off the stand and wouldn't allow him to, and all the external witnesses were denied while the prosecution did whatever they want. So in protest of that, the defendants in this trial, it was pretty amazing actually, they declined to give a closing argument. I did a short video update on that over on the Facebook page if you guys want to check it out. Okay, so what else? Some of these questions, like I'm not going to answer directly because they're explained all the time in my videos. I mean, I deal with these different officers and stuff, and I love the police enough to speak out against their terror and their treason. Somebody asked, just looking at the different questions. I'm not going to know your specific statutes in your states typically, but state statutes are illegal if they violate your rights. Doesn't mean you should break all of them all the time because you will go to jail most likely, but you should resist in whatever way is principled, and always film, always film. The biggest power and resistance we have right now is to spread it to other people. Texas is full of unconstitutional laws, so are most other states. What kind of a DSLR do I own? I own various cameras, and if I'm shooting serious photo or video, I'm usually using Sony mirrorless cameras at this point, but I do have some Canon cameras and stuff as well. That's kind of something more for my other channel, youtube.com/Seim Studios, S-E-I-M Studios. So go subscribe over there because I have lots of videos from my day job and my photography and things like that. Okay, I'm just looking at your questions. What camera do I use to film with? Okay, now this is a relevant question. Now I have really good cameras. I have Canon cinema cameras. I have Sony cameras. I mean, I've been in photography and visuals for 20 years. So I have equipment that I use if I'm doing production video. But I can tell you this, thanks guys, the reason most of my videos you see on this channel, right? If I do a video and I'm doing like a dialogue or some production video, I'm gonna use a good camera. Most of my activism videos are done from a phone because the best camera is the one, you know, for activism is the one you have with you. And there's a reason. I mean, I always have my phone. I have a little extra battery backpack on my phone so that I always have battery. I'm very attentive to make sure my phone never runs out of battery. I'm attentive to make sure I know how to use it really well so I can quickly get video going. And it's not about the camera you're using. It is about the camera you have with you and having it be reliable. And so I buy a quality smartphone. I'm using an iPhone 7s Plus right now. And I just kind of I'm willing to pay for whatever's the best camera in the smartphone that I can get within reason, because having a good front-facing camera for things like I'm doing right now is very important. This model of phone was better than the last model, right? So I want my quality to be there because I do have a lot of understanding of visual image quality, but at the same time I want something that's functional. Now if I'm trying to do a really good setup and I want a production quality, yeah, then I'll hook up mics. And so I can hook a mic into this phone. I've done that before. I can hook a mic into my big cameras. I can put big lenses on. But that's a little bit about cameras. But main thing, just have a good smartphone and make sure you know how to use it. Make sure the battery's charged and actually turn it on. That's the main thing. The main thing in activism is just turn it on. My mom and dad actually were leaving my house the other night. We had a Bible study, and they saw one of the local syndicate members pulling somebody over, and they just stopped and they pulled over, right? And then my brother-in-law, who was also leaving my house, he stopped and he pulled over, and they turned their cameras on and just observed and filmed. That cop was gone. I mean, he was out of there, guys. When you hold them accountable, they literally run away. Okay, so we can be people of peace and stand up. And so all these people, like, you have people say, don't stand up, don't speak out. And you have other people saying, I want revolution. It's like, you need to find the peaceful middle ground. When you resist with peace, the bad guys, the bullies, have a tendency to run away. The problem is there's not enough of us doing it. And so your words have power. Your actions have power. Somebody asked, have I ever dealt with cops in Texas? Yes, I almost got arrested by cops in Texas earlier this year. They were psychotic, and they are known for that. Texas police are some of the worst in the country because Texas is one of the most enslaved and fascist states in the country. Not to say that there's any free states in the United States of America. They're all filled with tyranny. But in Texas, people are trained from birth to worship the state, even more so, I think, than in some other states. And so, yeah, Texas is very. I love my Texas friends, and I pity them at the same time because Texas pretends that it has lots of freedom, and it doesn't. It is a major, major, major police state. So, Texas, yes. What's my opinion on why Alex Jones abandoned the Bundy family and friends? You know what? I'm just disappointed in fake news and fake reporting and faction. If you go to the InfoWars page, it's all about it's mostly about Trump, right? I mean, you got David Knight, who's done some reporting for the sham of a trial happening on the Bundys and things like that, but mostly at this point, InfoWars has just become about the party faction and supporting whoever they like, right? You don't support party, you don't support faction if you're for liberty. You support what's right. And if the people you once supported are now doing tyranny and what's wrong, you speak out against them. It's called having character. That's what we need more of, okay? Have I ever tried weed? No, I have not, but I am an herbalist, and so I have an extensive herbal library, and I do a lot with herbs, and there's videos, there's a category of herbal medicine on this channel, and yes, cannabis does have some good herbal properties, but I try and use things for medicine, and I haven't had a particular need for cannabis for anything, because there's a lot of other herbs. It's not the wonder herb that fixes everything. And I don't like being drunk or high. I do like a glass of wine or a nip of whiskey or something like that, but not for drunkenness, just to relax and just to enjoy, just like I like a cup of coffee. So I think we need to keep our wits about us in these times, not be out there. I hear people talking that are high, that have clearly been smoking pot. And I kind of feel bad for them, right? Because they have a right to. I certainly don't want people to be arrested for getting drunk, right? You answer to God. We all answer to God, not the state. But I'm like, why do you need to do that? Why do you need to be drunken? I want my wits about me. I'm not more intelligent when my wits are dulled. And so I would encourage you all to enjoy life, right? But enjoy life while loving your neighbor and finding ways to set an example for your neighbor and be mentally on top of it so that you can take on the enemy and take on tyranny and do what's right. All right, so I'm just looking. Look, a lot of comments, so I'm just trying to pick out some stuff. Yeah, you know, too much of anything. I'm not trying to hate on people because they like marijuana, but just don't be drunken, right? Don't fry your mind with anything. I don't care if it's alcohol or weed or CO2 or whatever, right? Let's keep our wits about us because we need all we can get because there's not a whole lot of free-thinking people out there anymore. And the system wants us to be dumbed down, and at the same time, they want to make it illegal to be dumbed down so they can put us in prison. It's a bad system. All right. If I'm a Christian, why do I drink? You know, we could talk about that a lot. Having a drink has nothing to do with being a Christian. Jesus actually made barrels of wine for a wedding, and it was the best wine, by the way. But Jesus didn't run around getting drunk either. So I think moderation, whether it's in your weight, in the food that you eat, in what you drink. You know, you won't see me out at a binge getting smashed because I don't think that's a good example for those around me and for my kids. I don't think it's good for me and my relationship, you know, spiritually. And I want to honor Jesus. So I'm going to do my best to do that. Not that I'm perfect, but legalism and all the legalism that tends to be promoted. It's weird. The church is totally messed up in America. You know, they promote a fake ideology of a free punch card to heaven if you make a confession and give a tithe to their church, while at the same time, you know, not speaking out against evil and sin and abuse of others and sin in individuals' life, while at the same time, completely ignoring things, and at the same time getting hung up on other things, dumb things, right? Strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. That's what we see in the churches in America. So you don't need to go to some fake church that says we're the true church to be a Christian. You need to follow Christ, and you can find all you need about that in His Word. Let's see here. Did the wine Jesus made contain alcohol? Yeah, you know, the Protestants severely like to say it didn't, even though there's no evidence. I got the Jews in Jesus' time. They weren't drinking grape juice. Okay, so why don't you ever mention the Zionist Jews that control the world? Because they don't. Tyrants and bad people control the world. And anytime you make it about race, you've completely missed the boat. And so I don't make it about race. Are there bad Jews that are pulling strings? Yeah. Are there bad Germans that are pulling strings? Are there bad Norwegians? Like, why on earth would I care what somebody's race is? It's or the color of their skin or anything like that. I mean, that's what we're seeing in Charlottesville is all these factions fighting against each other for nothing, and it's idiocy. It's idiocy. We need to be coming together and defending each other's rights. So the one you need to oppose is the one abusing somebody's rights. And if you're worrying about someone's race, their faction, you know, I mean, Zionists, Jews, all this stuff, it's so pathetic to watch people do this and to watch people try and demonize entire groups of nations and races and things like that, right? And it's really sad. Really sad. Oppose evil, right? The blue line is a faction. It's not a race. It's not a nation. It is a criminal syndicate. And so we oppose that not because we don't love individuals within it, but because they're a member of a criminal syndicate. Throw out your racism and stop pretending that it's not racism. Okay, I'm looking at other comments. We're not going to get hung up on that foolishness. Let's see. What do you think about North Korea, who don't even allow religion? You know, there's an interesting video. Look for a video called Haircut in North Korea. It exposes pretty well how the United States has been terrorizing the world for decades, including North Korea. And so what they do is they make lots of propaganda about North Korea. Now, I'm not suggesting that North Korea isn't run by tyrants, because I think it is, but it's so hard to get the truth. Isn't it weird? We have the best communication ever in the history of the world, and yet it's so hard to get the truth. So do some homework on that. I don't think North Korea is a very great place, but our courts can't be much worse than North Korea's courts, because they are like American Sharia law. That's what runs our courts. All right, so I'm just looking. I don't want to go on too long because I got some other stuff I got to take care of tonight. Somebody asked, like, what do you do if a cop threatens you? I mean, you can look at the video from Texas, because they were threatening to arrest my whole family. A lot of times it's my demeanor. If a cop says, oh, if you don't stop that, I'm going to arrest you. And I'm like, why would you, so I might stand up to them while taking a step back. I might be like, hey, whoa, like, you need to calm down, man. I'm not doing anything. I'm just observing, right? So I'm going to say things, just like cops, while they're beating you, say stop resisting. While they're accusing me of something, I'm going to say things to remind the viewer and whoever, them, that I'm not the aggressor. And so I might do things like put my hands up and be like, hey man, I'm just here to observe, just relax, you just need to calm down, right? And so I'll use that. The Texas scenario is a case of tactical retreat, because I had my family with me. And so I can't have my whole family getting arrested and the government taking my kids, because I don't want my kids in the hands of Nazis. So my government, being the terrorists that they are, especially the Texas police down there, I mean, they were ready to fritz out. These people, they were crazy. Go watch that video. That girl was nuts. But in that case, I backed up a little bit. I gave them a little bit, even though I stayed there and kept filming them, because I didn't want them breaking my windows out when I was 1,500 miles from home and taking my kids. So measure yourself, get experience, start by simple filming of police, maybe across the street with the window down. And you're going to have to step outside your comfort zone, but you don't have to do it all at once. Just take action. Just do something. Traveling versus driving, someone says. Again, this is another hang-up people are getting hung up on, right? They take words that are used in statutes and then say, well, that word's not the real word, this other word's the real word. All this stuff, all this sovereign stuff, traveling versus driving, you only have rights if you use special words. Your rights are inherent in you. They're God-given, or they're natural if you prefer. And so, whether the flag has fringe on it, whether you use the word travel versus drive, none of these things matter to your rights. If someone is violating people's rights, we need to oppose them and stop worrying about whether or not people are using the right words. If our justice is based on whether people use special words, then we have no justice. Knowing the right words is not what justice is supposed to be about. And using special words will not get you out of being arrested. It won't save you when they want to lock you in a prison. It won't keep you from the ticket. When those things work and you see people talking about using magic words in the courtroom, when it works, it's only because they're not relevant enough to that tyrant judge to really want them. They don't care enough. They just want them out of their courtroom because they're annoying. And so they're not a threat to them. If you're standing up to the government and they're not pushing back and giving you trouble, it's probably because they're not afraid of you. So make them afraid of you, not because of your anger or your violence or your hate, but because you're clear and you're focused. Law's about life, liberty, and property, and I don't really care the words somebody uses. I'm not trying to beat up on anyone in here. I'm saying we need to focus. For years, people have been pushing this stuff to me, right? Every time I do something, people send me emails telling me a better way to do it, and I'm like, you know what? Just get out there and stand yourself and stop talking about magic words. Okay, what else? Let's see here. Do I fear for my family if I step out of line? I step out of line all the time. I can't be of the spirit of fear. That's not how God's created us to be. So I fight that. There's no question that there's fear in these times. I mean, we live in a fascist regime here in America, and you're in danger if you step up, right? I mean, look no further than Lavoy Finnecums and the Native Americans up at DAPL and the Bundy sitting in prison. And so courage is not being afraid. It's being afraid and standing up anyhow. And that helps you to set aside that fear. And when I get afraid, I appeal to heaven and I ask for a few legions of angels. And some of you may think that's dumb, but I think it makes all the difference in the world. So let's see here. Why do I give everyone such a hard time? You know, it's interesting. Somebody came in, somebody saw me that knew me the other day, and they said, are you still fighting the law? And I stopped and I paused and I looked at them and I said, I really thought about it. And I said, no, I represent the law. The police are fighting me. See, when you represent, never let a liar or a coward tell you that when you speak up against tyrants and abusers of your fellow man, never let someone tell you that you're the troublemaker, that you're giving people a hard time. Of course we should give tyrants a hard time, right? But that's not a fault. That's a character trait and something you should seek. I should come to the East Coast. I was on the East Coast a little bit speaking last year. The East Coast I find is even harder to get people engaged with. But yeah, when I'm out there, I certainly am willing to meet up with people. Let's see. All right, Corey. But Corey, I think Corey's being sarcastic in that question. But that is actually like a statement that I get from people all the time in terms of why do I give people a hard time. They always say this is what happens. This is what the police system and the judicial system in America, it takes the abusers and it makes them the victims. That's what they're doing with like the Bundy Ranch trials going on in Nevada right now. They won't even let them argue their case or have witnesses or show that the federal government was there abusing people. They're actually insisting that the people who were the violent aggressors from the Bureau of Land Management and the feds, that they were the ones that were the victims. So never let an abuser make themselves the victim. Always speak out against that, right? Whether it's in your local police station or a cop pulling somebody over on the side of the road, right? If someone stands up to a cop because they're out extorting and abusing and kidnapping, the cop isn't the victim. The cop is the perp, okay? He's the criminal, and we need to treat him like that because we love the police enough to tell them they're terrorists. Just, let's see here. Thoughts on pre-tribulation rapture. You know, let's not get into the book of Revelation tonight. I think that might be too much. And I think that the pre-tribbers are a bit optimistic, but I hope that you're right. And I hope that the post-tribbers are wrong because, boy, we need Jesus down here to help us out. So, all right, favorite book would be the Bible, like on a realistic spiritual sense. But my favorite book of fiction, like entertaining book, would be The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. He's probably the best fiction writer ever. The stuff he does is phenomenal, and a lot of beaten down serfs versus tyrants in his stories. The Way of Kings is the first in a series that I think there's 2 or 3 books out now, and it is absolutely engrossing. It's, even if you don't like high fantasy, you'll probably like The Way of Kings. So, yeah. And I think people are asking me if I'm a libertarian or what my party is, and I stand for liberty, so I guess you could call me a classical liberal. A lot of people, my Wikipedia page calls me a libertarian, but it also tends to call me other things that aren't necessarily true. So depends on who's whether it's been made neutral-ish or whether it's been trolled by haters. My Wikipedia page is not empirically accurate. At the very least, it's usually slanted against me. But a lot of people would call me libertarian. But the Libertarian Party, it's not about party and faction, right? Remember that all the parties, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, they're all failing us. None of them are defending liberty, okay? Thanks, Neri. Somebody said, hang on, is remaining silence another form of consent? Absolutely, and that's why I'm always telling people you have to speak out, and we need to speak up, and that we can change the world with our voice. We can change the world by being willing to pull over and holler at a police officer who's arresting somebody and say, hey, what are you doing? Who are you abusing, right? Speak to these subordinate little bully gangbangers like the criminals they are. But don't use violence, don't be hateful, don't be vulgar, just speak out. To me, like, government is like a petulant child that needs to be like straightened out by the people and kept in line. Okay. And let's see here. Let's see. That's my thought on Bitcoin. People keep asking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's interesting. I mean, I've looked into Bitcoin. I had a teeny tiny bit of Bitcoin at one point. This was early on, and I guess that wallet got lost or something, and so I don't have it. It's probably worth something now, but it wasn't a huge amount. Bitcoin's interesting, but it concerns me. I don't really feel like, I feel like it still has an inherent lack of backing, of value, right? Because it's a cryptocurrency and people say, well, that's good. But to me, I like things that have an inherent value, a trading value, right? Your skill has a value. Your work, something you build has a value. Even gold, right? It has an inherent value because it's rare and it's used for a lot of things. So Bitcoin seems to be backed by nothing, and I'm sure the Bitcoin fans are going to dispute me on this, but there's nothing inherently there. I like things that I can hold, and I also don't like things that I get into. In stock markets, kind of this way. Like if you're really passionate about having things done right, you kind of obsess over it. What's it worth today? What's it worth tomorrow? I don't want my focus to be like money and how much money we're making and how rich we are, right? I want our focus to be how rich we are in liberties and in freedom and in justice. So let's see. Okay, I'm just going to answer a couple more questions and we're going to wrap up. We've gone for about a half an hour. And let's see here. Do I know the U.S. as a company? You know, the U.S., yes, and you can talk about how the U.S. is a corporation and all this stuff. And here's the thing, this conspiracy stuff, there's usually relevance to it, guys. This traveling versus driving, sovereign versus not, U.S. as a company, right? Bankers controlling the world. There's a vein of truth in most conspiracies, some more than others. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, if you're hung up on the conspiracy itself, instead of standing up against the abuse, you're missing the point. All you're doing is talking in the background instead of getting out and shouting out for liberty on the front lines, okay? So I'm just saying, don't get hung up. The reason I don't talk about all these conspiracies and chemtrails and 9/11 and all this stuff, right? Even though there's stuff that has validity in these discussions, but to make those discussions, like, I see people that's what they're consumed with. And I'm like, wait a minute, Rome is burning, and we're still debating about like whether someone 20 years ago lit a fire. And so obviously we have the fire. We need to fight the fire. We need to stand up. And we need to stand up boldly and individually. People don't really want to be educated with mountains of paperwork, right? They need simple messages. They need you to show that you care and that you're going to stand up for them. And so your mountains of conspiracy theories are never, ever going to convince the multitudes. We need people's hearts to open. We need people to see abuse. We need people to see people standing up and that it's okay to do so. These are the foundations of how they've sold us tyranny, guys. That's how tyranny's been marketed to us, is they made it normal. You're never going to make liberty normal by just crying about all the conspiracy. That ideology it seems logical, right? It's like the old movies. As soon as you expose the bad guys and the corrupt cop, the newspapers are going to be all over it and the system is going to collapse. Like Mr. Smith goes to Washington. In reality, that's not how people are wired. People want to believe that the conspiracy isn't true because they don't want to deal with it. So what you got to do is actually get out there and just stand up and oppose the individual abuses that are happening today. Show that you care about your neighbor, and perhaps even more so, and I talk about this a lot in the tactics, when you take action, if you stop and call out a cop for being an abuser, you're showing people driving by that it's okay to stop and talk to that cop and tell him to knock it off. And you're showing that cop that people think that he's not okay, that he is a terrorist. People are not grasping how important this is. And so we have these people that are hung up on conspiracies and magic words and courtrooms and things like that, not understanding that they're playing right into the hands of the tyrants. They want you carrying on about distractions because they can keep dividing us against each other over here, and all they got to do is have a guy over here calling you a nut job for your conspiracy, and pretty soon everybody's fighting. What they're afraid is you standing up to them, you disobeying them, you openly defying their lawlessness and speaking out against it and showing other people that it's okay to do so. That is what tyrants are really afraid of. And if you're not doing that, that's why they're not afraid of you. All right. Let's see here. What's my favorite food? I don't know. My favorite food. Prawns, like good shrimp, are one of my favorites, but that's not always my favorite. It depends on the day. I do like fishes, sushi, good sushi, oh yeah. A good steak. Less, as I get older, increasingly less sweet things. When I was a kid, it was all about candy, right? Now the chocolate I eat is like 90% cocoa because I don't want the sugar. So, and I do really like coffee, good coffee. I roast my own coffee. I roast my own coffee. I am a square dance caller. I'm a ventriloquist. I paraglide, and I like outdoor sports. So yes. All right. Let's see. Whatever happened to the county auditor that physically attacked you? Nothing, because the government's not accountable and they're above the law. But that was an interesting video, and she was pretty small. She was just kind of like beating on me for a second, but it didn't actually do any damage. So you guys can watch that video on the channel. Okay, she wasn't actually beating on me, but she did physically attack me. Not the first time. Okay, take care, David. And I think we're gonna wrap it up for today. How do I feel about Europe cops? I feel that they murder people a lot less than American cops, but Europe isn't free. They still have lots of tyranny everywhere, and they're controlled to the hilt. What's interesting is you have a lot of nations, and that is a good question, you have a lot of nations that are, they're kind of socialist, they have a lot of tyranny and rules, and yet at the same time they don't abuse people as bad with those rules, right? I mean, America's the worst in terms of imprisoning people, murdering people on the side of the road. And so like our fascism in a way is the worst, even though we pretend we're a republic. We're really not a republic anymore. That's what we were founded on. That's what our Constitution is. But we're kind of this fascist oligarchy now with a Supreme Court that most of the time just rules that we were wrong and government was right. So I think that the ideal government in a society is a government, not a force, right? The only time force should be used is, you know, some people will say, oh, all government is evil, and so we shouldn't have any government, and we should have anarchy. And anarchy, by the traditional definition, is lawlessness. And then they staunchly argue that and say, no, it's just an absence of control. And it's like, well, not exactly, according to the definition of the word, but okay, it's a bad word to pick for your message. But let's get to the root of it. Law is about life, liberty, and property, equally and for all right? If that's law, then government's only role is to protect life, liberty, and property. And no law is lawful unless it protects that. It's meant to protect that. So the inaction of a government, a sheriff, right? Their authority, the people cannot vote a law that violates their neighbor's rights, because it's still not a law. The people don't have that authority. That's democracy. It's the collective voting to take away your stuff because they want it for free, right? That's not law. And so yes, because people are inherently corrupt and evil, governments pretty much always grow into tyranny because people don't vigilantly keep their government in check and disobey their government when they try to tread on that line. The only lawful role of government is to protect life, liberty, and property. And so people say, well, what about this law? What about that law? And almost all the laws are illegal because they're restricting an individual in a way and making a crime out of things that there's no victim for. You know, they say, well, you had something that you weren't supposed to, so you're going to jail. You were driving with a can of beer open in your back seat, so you're going to jail, right? All these arbitrary rules. You were driving while talking on a cell phone. You didn't mow your lawn. You didn't follow this rule. You made too much noise, right? So if you're impeding, if you're hurting someone else's life, liberty, or property, at that point, a government, by the consent of the governed, who are essentially, the government is essentially just supposed to be bodyguards of the people, that they say, hey, we're going to pay you to protect us, right? And as soon as they stop protecting you, they should be fired. They should be disobeyed because they're not law. They're just criminals. And that's what the blue line in America is. It's not that I hate cops. It's that the blue line is not law keepers. They're not lawmen. They don't represent law. They're a crime syndicate that robs and abuses and extorts. And just because they occasionally do good deeds along the way does not mean they're good guys. They're still the mob. They're still worse than the mob. They're still the blue syndicate. And so we need to stand up against that, all right? The proper role of government, the only proper role of government, is to protect life, liberty, and property equally and for all. And the moment they step outside that, the moment they try to force their beliefs, the church's beliefs, the state's beliefs on you, any beliefs outside of enforcing things that people are, a victim is being violated, and that's not their job. And so there are laws you can break, right? There are laws you can break that are not for a civil government. So for example, I mean, we're a sinful world. And so I might look at, say, the adultery or the homosexuality, as a Christian, I might be like, well, you know what, God says not to do that, and there's a good reason for it. But that doesn't mean I want people going to prison for that. See, the civil government's job, again, to protect life, liberty, and property. The moral law, you will answer to God for your moral actions, right? Now, some of you may not believe in God, and you'll say, no, I won't. Well, we'll find out, I guess. But the fact is, the moral compass of a society should be driven by those who have a moral belief, right? So if you're a church and you have a moral belief, you should speak out, you should speak your mind, and say, this is right, and you should push that. And just like anything else, just like they've sold us tyranny, you can promote a moral virtue, but not by force. That's not a civil government's job. Life, liberty, and property is for the civil government. Moral values are for the religious or the church governments, but not at the point of a gun. Simply, those values should be promoted by example, okay? Let's see here. Just looking. All right. How can I find my law about ID in North Carolina? Again, state statutes you can usually find, and I don't even want to call them law. You have statutes. Again, anything outside of what I just talked about is not actually law, but you do have statutes that they will enforce on you at the point of a gun. So state statutes, in these times, there's generally a website for example, on my phone I have an app for some of the state statutes, and I can search. So if I want to find unmarked car laws or laws for, rules for government. Most state statutes are actually meant to be rules for government, right? Not rules to restrict the people. So the legislature is supposed to be like the administrative branch of what the government can do and what it can't do within the confines of the Constitution that the people said were limiting to this. So you can probably find an app for whatever state you're in that has like the statutes for that state. Maybe not every state. I know there's one for Washington. I think it's called Washington RCWs. Usually they have a name for the statutes in every state because you have federal statutes, most of which are lawless and illegal, but they will still kill you for them. Then you have state statutes. And then of course you have county statutes and city statutes, which are almost always fake law, but they'll still enforce them at the point of a gun. But state statutes are usually what you want to be informed in your area if you want to own the narrative when you're talking to your police and things like that. Look those up. You can find them online. In most cases, some states are better than others in terms of having a searchable database, but usually if you search for state law, insert state here on police cars, that kind of thing. I mean, you got to learn to kind of sift through this stuff. I didn't find all this stuff because I went to law school. I just searched for it. So thanks for the kind word, guys. I don't know about a hero, but we all just need to stand up and speak out and love our neighbor. Okay, so let's see here. Where do we got here? Just looking. All right. Oh. Thanks. You guys are nice, but everybody get out there and be a little bit of a hero, okay? That's what we need is more people. Formal education. I don't know what that question is. I think that colleges are way oversold to people who don't actually want to go to college so they can have you in debt to the system. But I love learning. That's my master's degree right there, but it was earned not from attending years of school, but from proving myself. So, I mean, it's one of the most recognized degrees in photographics in the world, but it came from the PPA, and it was from me competing and educating and speaking and myself and winning competitions and proving that I had a certain skill set over a period of years. And so I think in terms of education, going back to a more apprentice type model, I don't even know if that's what's being asked, but it's an interesting question. We've got these colleges, and most people coming out of colleges are not actually educated. They've passed tests. Now, people that are really passionate about something certainly can go to college and learn, and there's certainly a place for universities, I think, but they don't need to be controlled by governments, and they shouldn't be just about putting you in debt and your children in debt. And what they've done is just like everything else in our fake education system and our indoctrination centers, they push the idea that you need to go to their education system, you know, from grade school up, right? So you need to stay. They want to keep you in their government-controlled system as long as possible. So go where you need for the best education you can. But in my experience, hands-on education, being passionate, not being high and drunk and distracted, and like, you know, learning and pushing yourself. And it's interesting because you know, lawyers, for example, go to law school and they do all this time in law school and they spend all this money and they get all this debt, and what they really make them is slaves to the system that believe in the system. It's very, very rare that I talk to a lawyer who really has any concept of law. And this sounds kind of arrogant, but I mean, usually they just have no idea. And and when I try and teach them law, because they have no idea about law, they know statute and they know manipulation, they know fake law to a degree, sometimes not even that very well. So it's bad. Bad education is ruining us. Ignorance is ruining us. We need to use sanity and reason again. All right, yeah, I hear you, Jesse. So, okay. Do you want Trump to build a wall? Walls are not meant to keep bad guys out. When you're building walls in these times, right? There may have been a time when there was no airplanes and no ladders, right, where walls were relevant. But walls are for regimes to keep people in. So if you've got people wanting to build a wall, like, don't be deceived and think they're trying to protect you. If your politicians want to build a wall, they don't care about protecting you from the bad guys, because the bad guys are already in. They are your politicians. Now, people do fall for the wall because, again, it's fake security, right? The whole border and immigration thing is a scam. We don't have an immigration problem. We have a government problem who is intentionally creating problems to make you think that the problem is immigrants or Muslims or whatever, right? The problem is the person that's abusing people's rights. And in the case of America, it's our own government, it's our blue line, it's our police. 100% of the tyranny is enforced by your blue line. It's very simple. So what we have to do is get past the propaganda and the faction. And when you set that aside and you open your heart to loving your neighbor, you know, when you humble yourself, when you seek God, when you love your neighbor, when you throw out your faction and become factionless, you start to see clearly. It's very eye-opening. It's very eye-opening. So yeah, let's see here. What do you think of gun rights? I've done lots of gun rights stuff. I hosted the largest felony civil disobedience 2A rally, I think, in American history here in Washington, and some other good people worked with me on that back in 2014. And I was doing a lot of gun stuff, and I absolutely affirm people's right to keep and bear arms and protect their families and their communities. But as we're seeing, guns won't save us. We have to stand up. We have to set aside faction. We have no recognized Second Amendment in the United States anymore. We really have no rights recognized by the courts. We just have the rights that are inherent to us. And so we need to protect those, and we need to stand up for those. And you know, maybe if we took the guns away from these psychotic cops and, you know, said, well, you can have guns on your private time at home because you have that right. But the fact is, the blue line has to be stopped. The whole police system in America is a lie. It's not police, it's not law enforcement, it's terrorism. And as long as you have things like the drug war, as long as you have enforcers that are extorting and robbing and kidnapping and murdering for profit, you're not going to have a lawful society. So really, until people change their hearts and start caring about whether their neighbor's being abused, because that's really what it's about. You can yell for yourself all day long and people are just going to say, oh, he wants something. It's when people wake up and they start defending the person next to them. That's what changes the world, guys. That's where it's at. It's the love for your neighbor that changes hearts and opens up liberty, all right? And yeah, police a lot of times don't like it when you record them, which is why you need to. Look, when police are not liking something, okay, when you have a terrorist, think about this for a moment. If you have a criminal organization and they don't like you doing something, it's probably because you're doing the right thing. So that means you do it more. You do it with more principle. You keep the high road. You do it with peace, right? You don't see me going out. I can be pretty bold with cops, but I don't need to raise my fist to them. I raise my camera and my voice to them. I shame them, and they literally run away, guys, because they're bullies. They're criminal bullies. Doesn't mean they won't ever hurt us for doing what's right. But so try to find a balance. I do a lot of videos. If you look on my channel, there's categories for education, and I do videos on the tactics. I have a video specifically on how not to get arrested, and I'm not saying that like it'll always work. I mean, I've been arrested. There's a video of me being arrested. So there's a video. I've been doing this for a few years. There's pretty much a video for all these questions on here, and I try to title them and make categories. If you go to the actual channel page for this channel, there's a lot of categories for different things. And yes, I mean, I've had police standing there with their hands on their gun, and they're criminals, right? They're dangerous and armed. Sometimes we gotta be willing to risk, because the fact is, if you live in America, you're at risk anyhow. I mean, your police could murder you on the side of the road at any minute, and you'll just be another statistic of the 3 people that are killed by police every day. So speak out. Okay, guys. All right, I need to go. I got some stuff I got to take care of. Thank you all, and I will come back. We'll do this another time if you guys want, but I got to go now. I think I've answered a bunch of questions, and if you guys enjoy this, we'll do another one. But shout out facebook.com/callmegav and callmegav.com. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter, head over there. And you guys, love your neighbor. Speak up. Take care. Sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions. There was a lot of them. I tried to cover all of the relevant ones, try to keep the trolls to a minimum, and get the word out. All right, take care. Bye-bye, guys.